My husband planned the accident to kill me and our unborn baby for my billions. 2 years later, I walked down the aisle, his wedding, with our daughter in my arms. The doors burst open. 500 heads turned in perfect unison, the sound of wood slamming against marble echoing through the ballroom like a gunshot. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Someone gasped. A champagne glass slipped from trembling fingers and shattered against the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden silence. And there I stood, white dress, dark hair flowing past my shoulders, a 2-year-old girl with curious eyes in my arms, very much alive, very much not dead. The man at the altar went white, not pale, white, like every drop of blood had just drained from his body and pooled at his feet, because standing in that doorway, backlit by afternoon sun streaming through, floor-to-ceiling windows, was the wife he murdered 2 years ago. I walked down that aisle, slowly, deliberately, my heels clicking against marble with each step, the rhythm steady as a heartbeat. Every eye in that room followed me. The bride at the altar started shaking. The groom looked like he was about to vomit. I stopped 10 feet from the altar and smiled, the same serene smile I'd worn the day he pushed me off a cliff. "Hello, Julian." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. "You look surprised," I continued, my voice calm and clear in that silent ballroom. "Did you really think I'd stay dead?" "This isn't real," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You're dead. You're dead. I watched you fall. I watched you die." I shifted my daughter on my hip. She looked around at all the flowers and fancy-dressed people with wide, innocent eyes. "You watched me fall," I agreed. 200 feet off a cliff in Costa Azura. You stood at the top and watched to make sure I went into the ocean. You waited 10 minutes to confirm I was dead before you called for help. Then you went back to your hotel room and celebrated with her. I pointed at the woman in the $50,000 wedding dress standing frozen at the altar. Tessa Vaughn, his high school sweetheart, his mistress, his accomplice. "Room 431, I said, looking directly at Tessa. "You ordered champagne, celebrated while search and rescue teams looked for my body in the water. Tell me, Tessa, how did the champagne taste? Did it go down smooth? Did you toast to my death? Did you laugh about how easy it was?" Tessa's face crumpled. I didn't know. He told me it was an accident." "Liar." The word cut through the ballroom like a blade. "You helped him plan it. You were on the same flight to Costa Azura. Different seat. First class. Wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses so I wouldn't see you. You stayed at a hotel down the coast. You knew exactly what he was going to do to me. And you waited for your turn to step into my life." Julian found his voice. He started backing away from the altar, hands up like he could somehow stop what was coming. "You're insane," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "The fall. It damaged your brain. You need help. Someone get her out of here." I pulled out my phone. One tap, and every screen in that ballroom lit up. The massive monitors they'd set up for the live wedding broadcast. Every single one now showed something different. Flight records. Tessa Vaughn on the same flight to Costa Azura as Julian and Eloise Cross. Seat 12A. First class. Hotel records. Julian Cross checked into room 431 at the Costa Marina Resort. Guest count, 2. The same day his wife went into the ocean. Text messages. Julian to Tessa, "It's done." Tessa to Julian, room 431. Celebrating. And the search history. Julian's laptop. 3 days before our anniversary trip. Costa Azura cliff deaths. Survivable falls. How to stage an accident. The room erupted. Guests started screaming. The media cameras that had been broadcasting this society wedding live to thousands of viewers spun around, catching every moment. My parents pushed through the crowd, my mother sobbing my name over and over, but I didn't take my eyes off Julian. "You told me you needed me to die," I said softly. "Right before you pushed me. Do you remember what you said? You said it's nothing personal. You said you just needed my money more than you needed me. You said I was too naive, too trusting, too good." Julian was shaking now, sweat dripping down his face. "And you were right," I continued. "I was all those things. I loved you so completely that I would have died for you. And you tried to make that literal. You pushed your pregnant wife off a cliff to inherit her billions. But Here's what you didn't count on, Julian. I took a step closer. I didn't die. Security tried to move toward me, but FBI agents were already coming through the doors. They'd been waiting outside for my signal, waiting for this exact moment. Julian Cross, one of the agents said, moving up the aisle with handcuffs ready. You're under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree. Julian tried to run. He actually tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Agents grabbed him, forced his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that echoed through the ballroom. No, he screamed, fighting against the agents holding him. She's lying. This is a setup. I didn't do anything. It was an accident. She fell. She fell. Tessa Vaughn, another agent said, approaching the bride who'd collapsed into a puddle of $50,000 silk on the floor. You're also under arrest as an accomplice to attempted murder. Tessa was sobbing, mascara running down her face in black rivers. I didn't know, she kept saying. I swear I didn't know. He told me it was an accident. I walked over to where she sat crumpled on the floor and crouched down so we were eye level. You knew, I said quietly. You've always known. You wanted my life so badly you were willing to kill for it. You wanted my husband, my money, my company, my world. Well, congratulations, Tessa. You got it. For about 5 minutes. Now you're going to spend the next 20 years in prison, thinking about what you did. I stood up, turned to face the room full of shocked guests and rolling cameras. My name is Eloise Pemberton, I said clearly. 2 years ago, my husband Julian Cross attempted to murder me by pushing me off a cliff while I was 6 weeks pregnant with our daughter. He wanted to inherit my stake in Pemberton Global Industries. He wanted my money. He wanted my life. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He thought I was dead. I looked down at the little girl in my arms. She was playing with my necklace, completely oblivious to the chaos around us. But I survived. A stranger pulled me from the ocean and saved my life. I spent 2 years healing, getting strong, gathering evidence, raising my daughter, and waiting for exactly the right moment to come back and destroy the man who tried to destroy me. I looked directly at the cameras. Julian Cross tried to kill me for my billions. Instead, he gave me something much more valuable. He taught me that I'm unbreakable, that I can survive anything, that I'm stronger than I ever knew. The agents started walking Julian toward the doors. He twisted in their grip, looking back at me with something that might have been regret or might have been rage. I loved you, he shouted. I loved you, Elle. No, I said simply. You never did. But I'm grateful anyway, because the worst thing you ever did to me became the best thing that ever happened to me. And then they took him away. Him and Tessa both, let out in handcuffs while 500 guests watched in stunned silence and cameras broadcast everything live to the world. My parents reached me then. My mother was crying so hard she couldn't speak. My father wrapped his arms around both me and my daughter, his whole body shaking. My baby, my mother finally managed. My baby girl, we thought you were dead. We buried an empty casket. We mourned you. How? How are you here? I have a lot to explain, I said. But first, I want you to meet someone. I turned to where Gabriel stood near the doors. Quiet, protective, always there when I needed him. He'd been ready to step in if anything went wrong, ready to protect us, ready to be whatever I needed him to be. Mom, Dad, I said. This is Gabriel Moretti. He's the man who saved my life. He pulled me out of the ocean when I was dying. He took care of me when I had nothing. He helped me raise Ivy when I was too broken to do it alone. He's the reason I'm standing here today. And he's the man I'm going to marry. For real this time. When I'm ready. When I'm free. My father looked at Gabriel for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for bringing our daughter home. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever wondered if you could survive the worst thing imaginable, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now because you're going to want to remember where you were when you heard this. Comment below where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because we're about to go on a journey, and I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand that sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is exactly what you needed to become, who you were always meant to be. This is the story of how I fell in love with a man who tried to kill me for my money, how I survived a 200-foot fall that should have been impossible to survive, How I lost everything and gained something better. How I came back from the dead to destroy the man who murdered me. And how I learned that real love isn't about fairy tales and perfect proposals. It's about someone pulling you from the ocean when you're drowning and staying with you while you learn to breathe again. So let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when I was young and stupid and believed that love was simple. Back to a college campus where a girl named Elle met a boy named Julian and thought she'd found something real. Back to before I knew that some people will smile while they plan your murder. 6 years earlier, I sat in a campus coffee shop wearing jeans I'd bought at a thrift store for $8 and a university sweatshirt that had seen better days. My hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no designer anything. Nothing that would make anyone look twice. That was exactly the point. My name wasn't Elle. It was Eloise Pemberton. My family owned Pemberton Global Industries. Real estate, tech investments, sustainable energy, an empire worth $4.2 billion that my parents had built from absolutely nothing. But nobody at Westbridge University knew that. I'd made sure of it. I'd enrolled under my mother's maiden name, lived in a regular dorm with a roommate who complained about the meal plan, worked part-time at this coffee shop for $9 an hour even though my family could have bought the entire campus without noticing the dent in our accounts. I just wanted to be normal, to be seen for who I was instead of what I had, to find someone who loved me, not my last name. That's where I met Julian Cross. He came into the coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Tuesdays were always slow, and I'd been reading a book between customers, something about sustainable business practices that I was probably taking too seriously for a 20-year-old. "One medium coffee, black," he said, and his smile was the kind that made you want to smile back. I poured his coffee. He paid. Exact change. Left a $1 tip in the jar. Then he came back the next day. And the day after that, always around 3 in the afternoon. Always ordered the same thing. Always left that $1 tip. By the end of the first week, we were making small talk. "What are you studying?" he asked, leaning against the counter while I made his coffee. "Business," I said. "You?" "Same. Maybe we have some classes together." We didn't, but we started studying together anyway. The library at first. Late nights when campus was quiet and we were both too caffeinated to sleep. He'd bring textbooks and I'd bring highlighters and we'd quiz each other on market analysis and corporate structure until the words stopped making sense. He was charming, easy to talk to. He came from a middle-class family in Ohio. His dad was a high school teacher. His mom worked in insurance. They were comfortable, but not wealthy. He was at Westbridge on a partial scholarship and working weekends to cover the rest. Everything about him seemed real in a way that nothing in my world had ever felt real. "Tell me your dreams," he said one night when we'd given up on studying and were just talking. "What do you want to do after graduation?" "I want to run a company," I admitted. "But not like the ones we study in class. Not just profit and shareholders and bottom lines. I want to build something that actually helps people, that creates jobs and opportunities and doesn't destroy communities for quarterly earnings. I want to prove you can do well by doing good." He looked at me like I'd said something profound instead of idealistic. "You're different," he said. "Most business students just want to get rich." "Maybe I am different," I said, not knowing how true that was in ways he couldn't see. We started dating officially after 2 months. He'd walk me back to my dorm after study sessions, hold my hand on the quad, bring me soup when I had the flu even though it meant skipping his own classes. On our 6-month anniversary, we went for pizza at this tiny place off campus that had checked tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. "I'm falling in love with you, Elle," he said across a table sticky with other people's spilled drinks. "And I need you to know that before we go any further. I'm falling in love with you, and it scares me and excites me, and I just needed to say it out loud." My heart felt too big for my chest. "I'm falling in love with you too," I whispered back. And I meant it. God help me. I completely meant it. But I knew I couldn't keep lying to him. Not if this was real. Not if we were building something that mattered. So I decided to tell him the truth. To bring him home for Thanksgiving and show him who I really was and pray that it didn't change everything. We drove to my family's estate the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Julian was driving his beat-up Honda Civic that had 200,000 miles on it and made concerning noises whenever he went over 50 miles per hour. "So, where exactly do your parents live?" he asked as we got closer. "Just outside the city," I said vaguely. "It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Private." He didn't think anything of it. Why would he? Then we turned onto the private road that led to the estate. Trees lining both sides, perfectly maintained. We drove for 2 minutes before the gates came into view. Massive iron gates with a P worked into the design. A security booth. Cameras. Julian slowed the car. "Elle, what is this?" "Home," I said quietly. The security guard recognized me immediately. "Welcome home, Miss Pemberton. Your parents are expecting you." He opened the gates. We drove through. The driveway was another quarter mile, curved through manicured grounds that looked like something from a magazine. Gardens that required a full-time staff to maintain. Fountains. Sculptures. And then the house came into view. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion. 50 rooms spread across 3 floors. Architecture that mixed classic and modern in a way that had won awards. Windows that reflected the afternoon sun like diamonds. Julian stopped the car in the circular driveway and just stared. "What the hell, Elle?" I took a deep breath. "My name isn't Elle. It's Eloise. Eloise Pemberton. My parents own Pemberton Global Industries. We're worth about $4.2 billion. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me. Not my money. Not my name. Just me." He turned to look at me. His face had gone carefully blank in a way that made my stomach drop. "You've been lying to me for 8 months. I've been protecting myself. Do you know how many people have pretended to care about me just to get access to my family's money? I needed to know you were different. That you loved me for me." Julian stared at the mansion, at the grounds, at the security cameras and the fountain and the visible wealth that surrounded us. Then he looked back at me and smiled. It didn't quite reach his eyes, but I wanted so desperately to believe it did. "You're still just Elle to me," he said. "Nothing changes." I kissed him, relieved, grateful, completely missing the flicker of something dark that passed behind his eyes. Something that looked a lot like hunger. My parents were waiting inside. My father, Robert Pemberton, was a self-made billionaire who'd started with nothing and built an empire through intelligence and ruthless business sense. My mother, Catherine, had been his partner in every sense, helping build the company from a single real estate investment into a global conglomerate. They were warm with Julian but cautious. I could see it in how my father shook his hand, in how my mother asked polite questions over dinner that were really assessments disguised as conversation. "What are your plans after graduation, Julian?" my father asked over the first course. "I'm hoping to get into corporate strategy," Julian said smoothly. "Help companies optimize their operations and expand sustainably." "Sustainably," my father repeated. "That's an interesting word choice. Most young people in business just want to move fast and maximize profits." "I think the best companies think long-term," Julian said. "Build something that lasts instead of burning bright and crashing." My father nodded. Approved, I thought. That night, after Julian had gone to bed in one of the guest rooms, my mother came to my room. "Be careful, sweetheart," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed like she used to when I was little. "I love him, Mom." "I know you do, but love and trust are different things. And right now, I'm not sure which one you're feeling. He's different. He's real. He doesn't care about the money." "Everyone cares about the money," my mother said gently. "The question is whether they care about it more than they care about you." I didn't want to hear it. I was 21 and in love and convinced I knew better. Over the next 2 years, as Julian and I got more serious, I watched him change. Subtle at first. So subtle I could convince myself I was imagining it. He started dressing differently. Better clothes. Designer brands he couldn't afford on his own. "Where'd you get that watch?" I asked one day, noticing the expensive timepiece on his wrist. "Oh, this?" He glanced at it like he'd forgotten it was there. Early graduation present from my parents, but his parents were a teacher and an insurance agent. That watch cost more than they made in 3 months. He started talking differently too, dropping names of expensive restaurants, mentioning luxury cars like he'd always known about them, fitting into my world like he'd been born to it instead of working his way there. And he started coming to family events, charity galas where people wore gowns and tuxedos and wrote checks for amounts that could feed small countries, business dinners where my father talked deals worth hundreds of millions, board meetings where I was learning to take my place in the company I'd someday inherit. Julian watched everything, absorbed it all, asked my father questions about expansion strategies and market positioning and how to maximize shareholder value. "You're going to inherit all this one day," he whispered to me after one particularly lavish fundraiser. "The company, the wealth, everything. We'll inherit it," I corrected, squeezing his hand. "When we get married, we're partners in everything." His eyes gleamed in the low light. "Partners," he repeated. "I like that." I should have heard the possessiveness in his voice. Should have seen the way he looked at the wealth more than he looked at me. Should have noticed that he talked about the money more than he talked about our future together. But I was in love. And love makes you blind to things you should see clearly. Julian proposed on the beach, where we'd had our first real conversation outside of campus. He convinced me to cut class for a day trip, something spontaneous and romantic. We walked along the sand as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that didn't look real. "Elle," he said, stopping and turning to face me. "I mean, Eloise. I'm still getting used to that." I laughed. "You can call me Elle. That's who I was when we met. That's who I still am." "You're so much more than that," he said. "You're brilliant, beautiful, kind. You're everything I never knew I needed. And I don't need your money. I don't need your family's company. I just need you. Every day. For the rest of my life." He got down on one knee, pulled out a ring that had clearly cost more than he should have been able to afford. "Will you marry me?" I said yes before he'd finished asking, crying, laughing, completely certain this was the start of my forever. We got engaged in March, set the wedding for October. 6 months to plan what my mother kept calling the wedding of the decade, even though I wanted something smaller. But I let her have her way. Let the wedding planners take over. Let it become this massive production with 500 guests and imported flowers and a dress that cost more than most people's cars. Because I was marrying Julian, and that was all that mattered. The wedding was beautiful, perfect in every way that money could buy perfection. I walked down the aisle in my grandmother's veil, and Julian cried when he saw me, and I thought my heart might burst from how much I loved him. "I, Julian Cross, take you, Eloise Pemberton, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said during our vows. "To have and to hold, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Until death do us part." I should have heard the threat hidden in the promise. Our wedding night was at the estate. My parents had given us the entire West Wing for privacy. Julian carried me over the threshold of our temporary suite, both of us laughing, still in our wedding clothes. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he whispered, setting me down gently. And I believed he meant it because I loved him, because I'd promised forever, because I couldn't imagine that the man I just married was already planning how to make that forever as short as possible. The first year of our marriage was when everything started to crack. I'd brought Julian into Pemberton Global Industries as my second in command. My parents had been hesitant. My father pulled me aside the day before Julian's first official day. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Mixing marriage and business is complicated. If things go wrong personally, it affects the company." "Things won't go wrong," I said confidently. "Julian is brilliant. He has great ideas. He'll be an asset. Just be careful," my father said. "And keep your eyes open." I should have listened. Julian started charming in the boardroom. He had good ideas and presented them well. The other executives liked him. He fit in seamlessly. But then small things started happening. Things I noticed but convinced myself didn't mean anything. He'd make decisions about my projects without consulting me first. Change directions I'd set. Override choices I'd made. When I confronted him about it, he'd smile and kiss my forehead. "I'm just trying to help, baby. We're a team, remember? What's good for the company is good for both of us." He started taking credit for my ideas in meetings. I'd propose something in private. He'd present it as his own in public. "I brought that up to you last week," I said after one particularly frustrating meeting. "Did you?" He looked genuinely confused. "I'm sorry. I thought it was something we'd developed together. You know how it is when you're married. Your ideas, my ideas, they all kind of blend together." He undermined my authority in subtle ways, suggesting to other executives that I was still learning, that I needed guidance, that I was lucky to have him helping me navigate the complexities of running a major corporation. And I started to feel myself shrinking, getting smaller, doubting my own competence. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was still learning. Maybe I did need his help. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, a voice whispered that something was wrong, that this wasn't what partnership was supposed to feel like. that I was losing myself in my own marriage. I just couldn't admit it out loud yet. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Julian had never stopped seeing Tessa Vaughn. Tessa had been his high school girlfriend. They'd dated for 2 years before Julian left for college. The breakup had been messy, toxic, full of screaming and accusations and dramatic declarations that they'd never speak again. But they'd reconnected 6 months after Julian met me. A random message on social media. "How are you? I miss you. Remember when?" At first it was just talking, catching up, harmless. Then it was meeting for coffee when Julian claimed he was studying late. Then it was hotel rooms. Cheap ones at first, the kind that rented by the hour and didn't ask questions. Julian would tell me he was working late at the library. Instead he'd be with Tessa, having the kind of intense, toxic, passionate encounters that felt like love, but were really just familiar dysfunction. Tessa worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, made $60,000 a year, lived in a decent apartment but nothing special, drove a car that was reliable but not luxurious, and she hated me with the kind of visceral hatred that came from jealousy so intense it burned. "You're living my dream," she hissed at Julian one night in a hotel room that smelled like cleaning chemicals and other people's regrets. Married to a billionaire, playing house in a mansion, getting everything handed to you. Meanwhile, I'm working 60-hour weeks to afford rent. "It's not that simple," Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? You got lucky. You met some naive rich girl who fell for your nice guy act, and now you're set for life." Julian sat up in bed. "She's not naive. She's smart, driven. She's going to run that company someday. And you'll be right there with her, spending her money, living off her name. Must be nice." Something dark passed across Julian's face. "She wants to add me to all the accounts," he said slowly. "Make everything joint. Says we're partners in everything." Tessa sat up too. "How much are we talking?" Julian was quiet for a moment. "Right now, she has about 80 million in her personal accounts, separate from the family trust. When her parents retire, she'll inherit her stake in the company, controlling interest, worth about 2 billion. Tessa inhaled sharply. $2 billion, give or take. And if something happened to her? If she, I don't know, died? Julian looked at Tessa, really looked at her, and something clicked into place. Something that had probably been there all along, waiting for the right moment to surface. As her husband, I'd inherit everything. Her stake in the company, her personal assets, all of it. Tessa smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That's a lot of money. It is. Seems like she's worth more dead than alive. Julian should have been horrified. Should have shut it down immediately. Should have recognized that this was the moment where a terrible thought became a real possibility. Instead, he said quietly, "Yeah, I guess she is." And that's how it started. Not with a dramatic plan. Not with some carefully orchestrated conspiracy. Just two people who wanted what they didn't have and were willing to do anything to get it. Over the next several months, the affair deepened. But it wasn't about passion anymore. It was about planning. "We can't just do anything obvious," Julian said during one of their meetings. "No poison, no hired killers. It has to look completely natural. An accident that no one would ever question." Tessa had been researching. She was good at research. It was part of her job, understanding medical details and risk factors and how things could go wrong. "What about a car accident?" she suggested. "You're driving. You survive. She doesn't. Tragic, but these things happen. Too many variables. What if I get hurt too badly? What if investigators look too closely at the scene?" They went through possibilities like they were planning a vacation instead of a murder, considered and rejected a dozen scenarios. Then, during their second year of marriage, I suggested an anniversary trip. "Let's go somewhere tropical," I said to Julian over breakfast one morning. "Just us. No work, no distractions. We need this. We need to reconnect." I'd been feeling off for weeks, nauseous, tired. My period was late, but I'd been stressed, so I hadn't thought much of it. Until I took a pregnancy test 3 days before our anniversary. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. Positive. I was 6 weeks pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor of our bedroom and cried. Happy tears, this time. We'd talked about having kids someday. Not yet, we'd said, but someday. Apparently someday had arrived. I wanted to tell Julian somewhere beautiful. Somewhere we could celebrate this next chapter of our lives together. Somewhere meaningful. So I suggested Costa Azzurra, an island nation known for its stunning cliffs and crystal blue ocean and luxury. Resorts where wealthy people went to forget the rest of the world existed. Julian's eyes lit up when I mentioned it. "That sounds perfect," he said. "When do you want to leave?" "I was thinking this weekend. Our anniversary is Monday. We could make a long weekend of it." "I'll book everything," he said quickly. "You just pack. Let me take care of all the details." I kissed him, grateful for his enthusiasm, completely unaware that he was already texting Tessa the moment I left the room. She's suggesting Costa Azzurra for our anniversary. This is it. This is our chance. Tessa's response came immediately. "Make it look good." Julian researched everything. He found the perfect location, a scenic drive up mountain roads, winding paths, steep cliffs, beautiful views, and absolutely no guardrails. He studied the area obsessively. Read about cliff deaths in the region, survivable falls versus fatal ones, how long it took for bodies to be found in those waters, how strong the ocean currents were. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. If someone fell from those particular cliffs into that particular stretch of ocean, their body would likely never be found. The current would carry them out to sea. Fish and time would take care of the rest. A perfect accident. He booked the flights, first class for both of us. Then, separately, he booked Tessa a ticket on the same flight, different row, first class. Hidden behind sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, he booked our hotel, the most expensive resort on the island, ocean view suite, champagne waiting in the room, and he booked Tessa a different hotel down the coast. Small, boutique, somewhere I'd never think to look. 3 days, he texted her. "I'll take care of it on day 1. Then we can spend the rest of the trip together, celebrating." "What about the body?" Tessa asked. "Won't they search?" "That's the beauty of this location. The current is too strong. Bodies don't get found. After a few days, they'll call off the search. I'll be the grieving husband. Everyone will feel terrible for me. And then I'll go home and inherit everything." The plan was perfect. Clean, simple, impossible to trace back to anything but a tragic accident. All he had to do was push his pregnant wife off a cliff and watch her die. We flew to Costa Azzurra on a Friday afternoon. I was giddy with excitement, the pregnancy test hidden in my purse, waiting for the perfect moment to share the news. Julian held my hand on the plane, kissed my forehead, told me how much he loved me. I had no idea Tessa was sitting 6 rows behind us, watching. The resort was stunning. Exactly the kind of place I'd imagined. White buildings cascading down to turquoise water, private beaches, restaurants with views that made you forget to eat because you were too busy staring at the ocean. Our suite had a balcony overlooking the water. Champagne was waiting in an ice bucket, rose petals scattered across the bed in a heart shape. "This is perfect," I said, wrapping my arms around Julian from behind as he stood on the balcony. "Thank you for planning all of this. Anything for you," he said. His voice was steady, but I couldn't see his face. Couldn't see the calculation in his eyes as he looked at those cliffs in the distance. "Let's go out," he suggested. "There's a scenic drive up the coast. The concierge said the sunset views are incredible." "I want to rest first," I said. The flight wore me out. Panic flashed across his face. Just for a second. Then he smiled. "Come on. We can rest later. We're only here for a few days. Let's make the most of it." Something in his insistence felt off, but I ignored it. Put it down to him being excited. "Okay," I agreed. "Let me change into something more comfortable." Julian had rented a convertible, bright red, the kind of car that screamed, "Look at me." We drove through the resort area and up into the mountains, the road winding higher with every mile. The views were incredible. Ocean stretching to the horizon. Cliffs dropping away to water that looked impossibly blue. The sun starting its descent, painting everything in gold. "Pull over here," I said when we reached a scenic overlook with a small parking area. "I want to take a picture." Julian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Actually, there's an even better spot a little further up. The concierge told me about it specifically. Trust me." We drove another 5 minutes. The road got narrower, more isolated, fewer cars. Then he pulled over at a spot that had no parking area, no other tourists, no guardrails between the cliff edge and 200 feet of empty air. Here, he said, turning off the engine. This is the spot. I got out of the car slowly. Something felt wrong. The location was beautiful but isolated. Too isolated. Julian came around to my side of the car. Walk over to the edge, he said. The view is better. I don't know, I said, suddenly nervous. It seems really high. Come on. Don't be scared. I'm right here. He took my hand, led me closer to the edge. My heart was pounding, and I didn't know why. When we were about 3 feet from the cliff edge, I stopped. This is close enough, I said. Julian, I want to tell you something. I have a surprise. Me first, he said, and his voice changed. Went cold in a way I'd never heard before. I turned to look at him. Julian? He wasn't smiling anymore. His face had gone blank. Empty. I'm sorry, Elle. I really am. But I need this more than I need you. What are you talking about? He took a step closer. I backed up instinctively. Closer to the edge. You were always too good, he said. Too kind. Too trusting. Too naive. I never loved you. I loved what you could give me. And now you're going to give me everything. Julian, you're scaring me. I need you to die, Elle. It's nothing personal. It's just business. And then he lunged. His hands hit my shoulders hard. I didn't have time to scream. Didn't have time to grab for him. Didn't have time to do anything but feel myself falling backward into empty air. I fell. 200 feet. The world spun. Sky and ocean trading places over and over. The wind screamed in my ears. I hit rocks about halfway down. Felt ribs crack. Felt something in my head split open. Felt pain so intense it went beyond pain into something else entirely. Then I hit the water. Cold. So cold it stopped my heart. Or maybe my heart had already stopped. I sank, the weight of my body and my broken bones pulling me down into blue that got darker with every second. My last thought before everything went black was the baby. Our baby. The surprise I'd never get to tell him about. And then there was nothing. Above on the cliff, Julian stood at the edge and watched. Watched the splash where I'd gone into the water. Watched for movement, for any sign that I might surface. He stood there for 10 minutes, watching, waiting, making sure. Nothing. No movement. No sign of life. The ocean current pulled it where I'd gone under, probably already carrying the body out to sea like he'd planned. Julian pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady when he dialed emergency services. My wife, he screamed into the phone. She was taking a photo, and she slipped. Oh God. Oh God, she went over the cliff. Please, you have to help. She's in the water. Please send someone. He gave them the location, sobbed convincingly, played the panicked husband perfectly. Then he sat down on the hood of the car and waited for help to arrive. And while he waited, he texted Tessa. It's done. Her reply came 30 seconds later. Room 431. Celebrating. Search and rescue arrived 20 minutes later. 4 boats. A helicopter. Divers in the water. Everyone moving with urgent purpose. Julian told them exactly what happened. They were taking pictures. She stepped too close to the edge. The rocks were loose. She lost her balance. He tried to grab her but couldn't reach in time. She fell. He saw her go into the water. The searchers worked until dark. 6 hours of combing the ocean, diving, looking, calling her name like she might somehow answer. They found nothing. The lead officer approached Julian gently. He was sitting on the hood of the car, head in his hands, the picture of devastated husband. Sir, I'm so sorry. The current in this area is very strong. If she went into the water, the chances of recovering her are slim. We'll continue searching tomorrow, but I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that we won't find her. Julian looked up with red-rimmed eyes. She's really gone, he whispered. I'm sorry, the officer said again. They drove Julian back to his resort, offered to call someone for him, asked if he needed anything. He said no, he just needed to be alone with his grief. Instead, he went to room 431 at the Costa Marina Resort, where Tessa was waiting with champagne and a smile that said they'd gotten away with it. They spent the next 3 days together, drinking, planning their future, talking about how they'd wait a respectful amount of time before going public with their relationship. A year, maybe. Enough time for people to stop watching so closely. Meanwhile, search and rescue teams kept looking for my body in the ocean. They never found it. On day 4, they officially called off the search, declared me missing and presumed dead, offered their condolences to my grieving husband. Julian flew home alone, first class. He cried during the flight, and the flight attendants felt terrible for him. At the airport, media was waiting. Someone had leaked that Eloise Pemberton, billionaire heiress, had died in a tragic accident in Costa Azura. Julian stood in front of the cameras with tears streaming down his face. "My wife," he said, voice breaking convincingly. "The love of my life. She's gone. She slipped at a scenic overlook and fell. They couldn't find her body. She's just gone." The reporters ate it up. Tragic accident claims young heiress. Devoted husband destroyed by loss. Fairy tale marriage cut short. The headlines wrote themselves. My parents were destroyed. Their only child, their daughter, gone without even a body to bury. My mother collapsed when she heard. Had to be sedated. Couldn't stop screaming that it wasn't real, that I was coming home, that this was all a terrible mistake. My father aged 10 years in a single day. His face went gray. His eyes went empty. He moved through the following days like a ghost. Julian played his part perfectly. He held my mother while she sobbed. He stood with my father at the memorial service they held, even though there was no body to bury. He gave a eulogy that had everyone crying. "Elle was everything to me," he said, standing at a podium in front of an empty casket covered in white roses. "She was brilliant and kind, and she saw the best in everyone. She believed in building something meaningful, in doing good while doing well, in making the world better simply by being in it. I don't know how to go on without her, but I'll try. I'll honor her memory by continuing the work she started at Pemberton Global, by building the kind of company she dreamed of, by making sure her vision lives on, even though she can't be here to see it." People told him he was so brave, so strong, so devoted. Behind closed doors, he met with lawyers about the estate. As her husband, he inherited her personal assets, $80 million transferred into his name. Her stake in Pemberton Global Industries went into a trust, but as her widower, and the presumed father of any future heirs, he had controlling interest. My parents were too destroyed by grief to fight it. They signed everything the lawyers put in front of them. Gave Julian exactly what he wanted. He'd murdered me and inherited billions. And everyone thought he was the victim. But what Julian didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I didn't die. I should have. By every measure of logic and probability in medical science, I should have died. But someone found me. Gabriel Moretti was 34 years old and running from memories when he found me floating in the ocean a mile from shore. He'd moved to Costa Azura 5 years earlier after his fiancée died in a car accident. Isabel had been everything to him. They were supposed to get married in June. She died in March. Driving to a dress fitting while Gabriel was at work, he'd gotten the call at his desk. "Architect's office in downtown Manhattan. Your fiancée has been in an accident. You need to come to the hospital immediately. She died before he got there. Internal injuries. The other driver had run a red light. Isabel never had a chance. Gabriel had fallen apart slowly. Stopped going to work. Stopped seeing friends. Stopped doing anything but sitting in the apartment they'd shared and staring at walls covered in wedding plans they'd never complete. 6 months after she died, he'd gotten on a plane to Costa Azura and never gone back. He'd bought a small house on the coast with money from insurance and savings. Started doing freelance architecture work. Spent his mornings swimming in the ocean because the physical exhaustion was the only thing that quieted the grief. Every morning at dawn, he'd swim the same route, out about a mile, parallel to the shore, back in. An hour of just him and the water and the slow process of healing that felt impossible but happened anyway. That morning, the morning after Julian pushed me off the cliff, Gabriel was swimming his usual route when he saw something floating ahead of him. At first he thought it was debris, maybe a piece of boat, maybe some trash that had washed out to sea. Then he got closer and saw fabric, hair, a person. His heart stopped, then started pounding so hard he could hear it over the ocean. He swam faster, reached the body, turned it over. A woman, young, bleeding from a head wound, lips blue, not breathing. Oh God, no. Gabriel started CPR in the water. breathing into her mouth, compressing her chest as much as he could while trying to keep them both afloat. "Help!" he screamed. "Someone help!" A fishing boat heard him, changed course, came speeding over. Strong hands pulled us both from the water. Gabriel didn't stop CPR for a second. "Get to shore!" he shouted at the fishermen. "Get to shore now." They radioed ahead. An ambulance was waiting when they docked. Gabriel carried me himself, ran up the dock with my broken body in his arms. "She's not breathing," he shouted at the paramedics. "I found her in the ocean. Please, you have to help her." They took me from his arms, loaded me into the ambulance. "Are you family?" one of them asked Gabriel. "I don't know who she is," he said. "I just found her." "Then you can't ride with us." Gabriel watched the ambulance drive away, stood on the dock dripping ocean water and someone else's blood, shaking. Then he got in his car and followed. The hospital was small but efficient. Gabriel burst through the emergency room doors, still dripping wet, still covered in my blood. "Where is she?" he demanded. "The woman from the ocean." "Where did they take her?" The nurse at the desk looked him up and down. "Sir, are you family?" Gabriel opened his mouth to say no, to explain that he was just someone who'd found her, a stranger who happened to be in the right place at the right time. But something stopped him. Some instinct he didn't understand. "Yes," he heard himself say. "I'm her husband." The lie came out smooth and easy, like he'd been practicing it. The nurse's expression softened immediately. "They've taken her to surgery. The doctor will come talk to you as soon as they know something. There's a waiting room down that hall. Someone will come find you." Gabriel walked to the waiting room in a daze, sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, stared at his hands. They were shaking. He'd lied. He didn't know why, didn't know this woman, didn't know her name or where she'd come from or how she'd ended up in the ocean. But when the nurse had asked if he was family, saying no had felt wrong, like abandoning her, like leaving her alone when she needed someone. He'd failed to save Isabel. He'd been at work instead of in that car. He'd spent 5 years wondering if things would have been different if he'd been there. This woman, whoever she was, wasn't going to be alone. Not if he could help it. 2 hours passed, then 3. Gabriel sat in that waiting room and watched other families come and go. Watched people get good news and bad news and everything in between. Finally, a doctor appeared, looked around the waiting room. "Family of Jane Doe from the ocean?" Gabriel stood. His legs were stiff from sitting so long. "How is she?" The doctor's expression was grave. "She's alive. Barely. She has a severe traumatic brain injury, multiple broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding that we've managed to stabilize. She's in a coma and we don't know when or if she'll wake up." Gabriel felt like he'd been punched. "Will she survive?" The doctor hesitated. "I don't know. The next 48 hours are critical. Her injuries are extensive. She's lucky to be alive at all. If you hadn't found her when you did, she'd be dead." "Can I see her?" "Not yet. She's in intensive care. We'll let you know when you can visit." The doctor paused. "There's something else. She's pregnant. About 6 weeks. We did an ultrasound. The baby's heartbeat is strong. It's a miracle, honestly, given the trauma her body has been through." Gabriel sat down hard. Pregnant. This woman floating in the ocean was pregnant. And somehow, impossibly, the baby had survived whatever had put her in the water. "Does she have any identification?" the doctor asked. "We need to notify her family. Find out who she is." Gabriel shook his head. "I don't know. I just found her in the water. There was nothing with her. We'll check missing persons reports, see if anyone's been reported missing. In the meantime, you should go home. Get dry. Rest. We'll call if there's any change." "I'm staying," Gabriel said. "I'm not leaving her alone." The doctor looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "There's a family room on the 4th floor. It has a couch. You can rest there." Gabriel went to the family room. There was, indeed, a couch, uncomfortable and too short. He lay down anyway and stared at the ceiling. He didn't know this woman, had no reason to stay, should probably call the authorities and explain the situation and go back to his normal life. But he couldn't shake the image of her floating in the water. Couldn't stop thinking about how close she'd come to dying. Couldn't ignore the feeling that finding her had been important somehow. That maybe this was his second chance. Not at love, not at replacing Isabel, but at saving someone when it mattered, so he stayed. 48 hours passed. Gabriel lived in that hospital. The nurses started recognizing him, bringing him coffee, asking if he needed anything. They let him sit with her on the second day. She was in the ICU, hooked up to machines that breathed for her and monitored every heartbeat, and looked impossibly fragile against white sheets. Her face was bruised. Bandages covered the worst of the head wound. Her dark hair had been shaved on one side where they'd operated to relieve pressure on her brain. But even broken and unconscious, there was something about her, something that made Gabriel pull a chair close to her bed and take her hand. "Hey," he said quietly, "I'm Gabriel. I'm the guy who found you in the ocean. I don't know who you are or what happened to you, but you're safe now. You and your baby. You're both safe. I promise." The machines beeped their steady rhythm. She didn't move, didn't respond, but Gabriel kept talking anyway. "The doctors say you might be able to hear me. I don't know if that's true, but just in case, I'm here. You're not alone. Whatever happened to you, whoever you are, you're going to get through this. You're strong. You survived something that should have killed you. That takes incredible strength." He sat with her for hours. The nurses had to kick him out when visiting hours ended. Gabriel went back to the family room, slept fitfully on the too-short couch, woke up at dawn and went straight back to her room. This became his routine. Every day, all day, sitting beside a stranger's hospital bed and talking to her like she might wake up any moment. He told her about himself, about Isabel, about moving to Costa Azura to escape memories, about his morning swims, about how finding her had felt like the universe giving him a purpose he'd lost. He read to her. The hospital had a small library cart. He picked books at random and read them aloud. Romance novels and thrillers and literary fiction. It didn't matter. He just wanted her to hear a voice. He played music on his phone, soft instrumental pieces that filled the quiet spaces between machines' sounds. And slowly, gradually, the woman in the bed started to stabilize. Her vitals improved. The swelling in her brain decreased. The punctured lung healed. Her body started the slow process of repairing itself. On day 7, the doctors downgraded her from critical to serious. "She's fighting," the doctor told Gabriel. "Her body is healing faster than we expected. It's remarkable, really. She's strong," Gabriel said. On day 10, they removed the breathing tube. She could breathe on her own. Gabriel held her hand when they did it, whispered encouragement while she struggled through those first independent breaths. "You can do this. I know you can. Just breathe. That's it. Just breathe." Her breathing evened out. The oxygen monitor held steady. "Good job," Gabriel said, squeezing her hand. "You're doing so good." On day 14, the hospital administrator came to talk to him. "Mr. Moretti, we need to discuss payment. Your wife's medical bills are substantial. We've been running them through as emergency treatment, but we'll need insurance information or payment arrangements soon." Gabriel hadn't thought about money. He had some savings, not much, but enough to cover some of it. "How much are we talking about?" The administrator looked uncomfortable. "So far, approximately $300,000. If she wakes up and needs rehabilitation, it could go higher." $300,000. Gabriel didn't have that kind of money, didn't have insurance that would cover someone else, didn't have any legal right to make medical decisions for this woman. But he couldn't let them stop treating her, couldn't let her die because of money. "I'll figure it out," he said. "Just keep taking care of her. Please." The administrator nodded slowly. "We'll work with you, but we'll need something soon." Gabriel left the hospital for the first time in 2 weeks, went home to his small house on the coast, stood in his living room and tried to figure out what the hell he was doing. He'd lied to hospital staff, claimed to be married to a woman he didn't know, committed to paying medical bills he couldn't afford, attached himself to a stranger's tragedy. He should walk away, should tell the truth, should let the authorities handle this properly. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her floating in the ocean, saw her broken body, saw the monitors tracking her heartbeat and her baby's heartbeat and all the fragile evidence that life continued despite everything. He couldn't walk away. So he went back to the hospital the next morning with a plan. He'd sell his house if he had to, take out loans, do whatever it took. But when he walked into her room, something had changed. Her eyes were open. Gabriel froze in the doorway, stared at the woman in the bed who was looking back at him with confused dark eyes. A nurse was adjusting her fourth. "Oh good, you're here. She just woke up a few minutes ago. She's disoriented but responsive." Gabriel walked slowly to the bed. His heart was pounding. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, you're awake." "Oh, thank God." The woman's eyes tracked him. Her mouth moved. No sound came out. Her throat was raw from the breathing tube. "Don't try to talk yet," Gabriel said gently. "You're in a hospital. You're safe. I'm Gabriel. I'm the one who found you. In the ocean." Her eyes widened. Confusion turned to fear. The nurse stepped forward. "You were found unconscious in the water almost 3 weeks ago. You've been in a coma. You're safe now. Do you remember what happened?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. She tried to talk again. This time a whisper came out. "Who are you?" "I'm Gabriel Moretti. I found you while I was swimming. I pulled you out of the water and brought you here." Her hand moved to her stomach. Protective. Instinctive. "My baby." "The baby's fine," Gabriel said quickly. Strong heartbeat. "The doctors say everything looks good." Relief flooded her face. Then fear again. "Where am I?" "Costa Azura, the regional hospital. You've been here for almost 3 weeks." Her breathing started getting faster. Panicked. "My husband." The nurse stepped in. "He's right here. You've been very lucky. He's been with you every day." The woman looked at Gabriel with confusion. "I don't know you." Gabriel and the nurse exchanged glances. "Ma'am," the nurse said gently, "this is your husband. He brought you in. He's been here the whole time." "No," the woman said, her voice getting stronger. "My husband." "Where is my husband?" Gabriel's stomach dropped. "He's not here," Gabriel said carefully. "It's just me. I found you. No one else was around." The woman stared at him. Then understanding started to dawn. Not the kind of understanding that brought relief. The kind that brought horror. "He's not here," she repeated slowly, "because he thinks I'm dead." The nurse looked confused. "Who thinks you're dead?" But the woman was looking at Gabriel now. Really looking at him. "You told them you're my husband." It was a statement, not a question. Gabriel nodded slowly. "They wouldn't let me stay with you otherwise. I'm sorry. I couldn't leave you alone." "What's your name?" the woman asked. "Eloise," she whispered. "Eloise Pemberton." The nurse gasped. "The Eloise Pemberton? You've been all over the news. They said you died in an accident. Your husband has been on television." "Oh my God." Eloise's hands started shaking. "He's been on television?" "Yes, saying you fell off a cliff, that they couldn't find your body, that he was devastated. There was a whole memorial service. It's been everywhere." Eloise started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind that bordered on hysteria. "Of course there was. Of course he's devastated. He probably gave a beautiful eulogy." The nurse looked bewildered. "I don't understand." Eloise's laughter stopped. She looked directly at Gabriel. "My husband pushed me off that cliff. He tried to kill me. He's not devastated that I'm dead. He's celebrating." The silence in that hospital room was deafening. The nurse stared at Eloise like she'd just spoken a different language. Gabriel stood frozen by the bed, trying to process what he'd just heard. "Your husband tried to kill you," he repeated slowly. Eloise nodded. Her hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady now. "We were on our anniversary trip. He drove me up to a cliff, told me he needed me to die. Then he pushed me. I fell 200 feet into the ocean. He stood up there and watched to make sure I went under. Then he called for help and told everyone I slipped." The nurse's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. We need to call the police, the authorities, someone." "No," Eloise said sharply. "You can't tell anyone I'm alive. But if he tried to murder you," the nurse protested. Eloise grabbed the nurse's arm. "Please, listen to me. My husband is smart. Calculating. He's been planning this. If I come forward now with no proof except my word against his, what do you think happens? I'll say he pushed me. He'll say I fell, and the head injury has me confused. His story is already out there. Mine isn't. He's the grieving widower. I'm the confused victim who survived a tragic accident." Gabriel sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. "She's right. Without evidence, it's her word against his. And he's had 3 weeks to establish his narrative. Exactly, Eloise said. She was breathing hard now, agitated. The monitors started beeping faster. Right now, he thinks I'm dead. He thinks he got away with it. That's my advantage. The only advantage I have. So what do you want to do? Gabriel asked quietly. Eloise looked at him, really looked at him. This stranger who'd saved her life and lied to a hospital and stayed by her bedside for 3 weeks. I need to disappear. Stay dead. Heal. Get strong. And then I need to gather evidence and destroy him. That's insane, the nurse whispered. I know, Eloise agreed. But will you help me? Gabriel should have said no. Should have insisted they call the authorities and do this the right way. Should have walked away from this impossible situation. Instead, he looked at this broken woman with fire in her eyes and said the same thing he'd said when he decided to stay at the hospital. Yes, I'll help you. The nurse looked between them. This is crazy. You're both crazy. Please, Eloise said. Please don't tell anyone. Not yet. Just give me time. The nurse struggled with herself. Hospital protocol said she should report this. Ethics said she should get authorities involved. But she looked at Eloise's desperate face and thought about a man who'd pushed his pregnant wife off a cliff. 1 week, she finally said. I'll give you 1 week to figure this out. Then I have to report it. I have to. Thank you, Eloise breathed. Thank you. The nurse left, promising to keep the secret for now, to list Eloise as Jane Doe in the system, to be careful about who had access to her room. When they were alone, Gabriel pulled his chair closer to Eloise's bed. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. I need to understand what we're dealing with. So Eloise told him everything about being Eloise Pemberton, heir to a $4.2 billion empire, about hiding her identity in college, about meeting Julian and falling in love with who she thought he was, about the proposal and the wedding and the slow realization that something was wrong, about bringing him into her family's company, about the undermining and the gaslighting and the way he'd slowly taken over her life, about the anniversary trip, the cliff, his cold eyes, the push. I was 6 weeks pregnant, she said, her hand on her stomach. I was going to tell him that day that we were having a baby. I thought he'd be happy. Instead, he tried to kill us both. Gabriel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat back and ran his hands through his hair. Your family thinks you're dead. Your company thinks you're dead. And your husband is probably inheriting everything right now. Eloise nodded. As my spouse, he gets my personal assets and controlling interest in my stake of Pemberton Global. My parents are probably too destroyed by grief to fight it. So, what's the plan? Eloise was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet. But I can't go back now. Not weak, not pregnant, not without proof that will stand up against his lies. You need time, Gabriel said. I need time, Eloise agreed. Then take it. Stay dead. Recover. I'll help you. Why? Eloise asked suddenly. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You have no reason to get involved in this. Gabriel thought about Isabel, about the accident he hadn't been there to prevent, about 5 years of wondering if he could have saved her if he'd just been in the right place at the right time. I couldn't save someone I loved, he said quietly. But I can help you. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe I'm doing this for me as much as for you. But I'm not walking away. Eloise's eyes filled with tears. I don't even know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot to figure out. Over the next week they made plans. Gabriel contacted a lawyer he trusted, explained the situation carefully. The lawyer was horrified but agreed to help. We need to keep you officially dead for now, the lawyer said during a private meeting in Eloise's hospital room. If Julian thinks you're alive, he'll either finish the job or destroy any evidence. We need time to build a case. How long? Eloise asked. Months at least. Maybe longer. Can you handle that? Eloise looked at her stomach, at the small bump that was starting to show. I can handle anything if it means he pays for what he did. The lawyer helped them establish a new identity, temporary documents that listed Eloise as Elena Russo, Gabriel's wife, on paper. Everything legal enough to pass casual inspection but not permanent. When you're ready to come back, the lawyer said, when you have your evidence and your strength, then we'll destroy him properly. Eloise was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. 5 weeks total since the accident. She could walk, but not far. Could breathe, but her ribs ached. Could think clearly, but headaches came in waves that left her dizzy. Gabriel brought her to his house on the coast. Small and simple and nothing like the mansion she'd grown up in. "It's not much," he said, helping her inside. "It's perfect," Eloise said, and meant it. The first few weeks were hard. Eloise was weak, in pain, struggling with physical therapy that left her shaking and exhausted. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Some days she cried from the pain and the loss and the overwhelming weight of everything that had happened. Gabriel was there for all of it. He cooked meals she could barely eat, helped her with exercises the physical therapist prescribed, sat with her during nightmares when she woke up screaming about falling. "I'm here," he'd say, holding her hand in the dark. "You're safe. He can't hurt you. I promise." And slowly, gradually, Eloise started to heal. She also started researching. Gabriel bought her burner phones and laptops with cash, set up VPNs and encrypted connections, created ways for her to access information without leaving digital footprints. Eloise hacked into news sites and watched Julian step into her life. The headlines made her physically sick. Widowed CEO Julian Cross takes helm of Pemberton Global Industries. Julian Cross honors late wife's legacy with new sustainable energy initiative. Grieving husband establishes Eloise Pemberton Memorial Scholarship Fund. He was playing the part perfectly. The devoted husband honoring his dead wife's memory. Using her name and her ideas and her company to build his own reputation. "He's winning," Eloise whispered one night, staring at her laptop screen. Gabriel sat beside her on the couch. "Not for long." "How can you be sure?" "Because you're alive. Because you're getting stronger every day. Because he thinks he got away with it, and that's going to make him careless. And when he gets careless, we'll be ready." Eloise closed her laptop and leaned against Gabriel's shoulder. "What would I do without you? You'd survive. You're the strongest person I've ever met." "I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling invincible. It's about getting up every day even when you want to give up. That's what you're doing." At 2 months pregnant, Eloise started showing. The bump was small but visible. Real. Undeniable. She stood in front of Gabriel's bathroom mirror one morning and stared at her reflection, at the evidence of the baby growing inside her, the baby Julian had tried to kill. "I can't keep this baby," she said when Gabriel came to check on her. "It's his. Every time I look at this child, I'll see him." Gabriel stood in the doorway. "Then love the half that's you. What if I can't? What if I look at this baby and only feel hate?" Gabriel stepped into the bathroom, stood beside her so they were both reflected in the mirror. "You won't. I know you won't. Because you're not capable of hating an innocent child. You'll see yourself in this baby. Your strength, your resilience, your goodness, not his evil." Eloise turned to look at him. "Why are you so sure?" "Because I see you every day. I see how hard you fight, how much you care, how determined you are to survive. That baby is getting the strongest mother in the world. She's lucky." "I have a feeling," Gabriel said, smiling slightly. Eloise looked back at the mirror, at her small bump, at the possibility of a future she hadn't let herself imagine. "What if you're right? Then you'll have a daughter who's as fierce and brave as her mother." Something shifted in Eloise that day. Not acceptance exactly, but the beginning of it. The possibility that this baby could be something separate from Julian. Something that belonged to her. At 3 months pregnant, the baby kicked for the first time. Eloise was sitting on Gabriel's porch, watching the ocean, when she felt it. A flutter, then a definite kick. She gasped. Gabriel came running from inside the house. "What's wrong?" "The baby." She kicked. Gabriel knelt beside Eloise's chair. "Can I?" Eloise took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Another kick, stronger this time. Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. "She's strong, just like her mom." "I think it is a girl," Eloise said, laughing through her own tears. "I don't know why, but I feel it." "What will you name her?" Eloise thought about her grandmother, the strongest woman she'd ever known until Alzheimer's had taken her slowly and cruelly. But at her core, she'd been unbreakable, growing through every hardship. "Ivy," Eloise said. "After my grandmother. Ivy grows through anything. It's persistent, unbreakable. That's what I want for her." Ivy, Gabriel repeated. It's perfect. That night, something changed between them. Not romantic exactly, but deeper, more intimate. The kind of connection that formed between people who'd survived impossible things together. Gabriel made dinner. Badly. He burned the chicken so thoroughly it set off the smoke alarm. Eloise laughed. Actually laughed. The first real, genuine laughter since the cliff. Gabriel turned from the smoking pan and stared at her. What? You're smiling. Really smiling. Your cooking is terrible, Gabriel. I know, he said, but he was smiling too. They ordered pizza instead. Sat on the porch and ate straight from the box while the sun set over the ocean. Thank you, Eloise said quietly. For what? For seeing me. Not just the broken woman you pulled from the ocean. Not just the billionaire heiress. Not just the victim. You see me. The actual me. You're easy to see, Eloise. You're the strongest person I've ever met. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Eloise said something that surprised them both. I think I'm falling in love with you. Gabriel went very still. And it terrifies me, Eloise continued. Because the last time I fell in love, it almost killed me. Literally killed me. I trusted someone completely, and he pushed me off a cliff. How am I supposed to trust my own feelings again? Gabriel set down his pizza, turned to face her fully. What do you need from me? Honesty, even if it hurts, even if it's hard. I need to know that you'll never lie to me, never manipulate me, never make me doubt my own reality. I promise. I will always tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to lie. Eloise searched his face, looking for signs of deception, looking for the calculation she'd missed in Julian's eyes. She found nothing but sincerity. I'm falling in love with you too, Gabriel said quietly. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know you're vulnerable, and I'm probably taking advantage even having these feelings. But it's the truth. I love you, and I would die before I let anyone hurt you again. How do I know you mean it? You don't. Not yet. But I'll prove it every day. Through actions, not just words. I'll show you what real love looks like, what partnership looks like, what safety looks like. And if you never feel safe enough to love me back, that's okay. I'll still be here. Eloise felt tears on her face. Gabriel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he wiped the tears gently. Can I kiss you? Yes. He kissed her like she was precious, fragile, something that needed to be handled with care, gentle and sweet, and nothing like the passionate, consuming kisses Julian used to overwhelm her defenses. This kiss felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, they were both crying. I love you, Eloise whispered. I love you too. They didn't rush into anything. Eloise still slept in the guest room. They still moved carefully around each other, but something had shifted. Something had opened. They were building something real in the ruins of Eloise's old life. At 4 months pregnant, Eloise started planning in earnest. The lawyer visited regularly with updates. Your parents transferred controlling interest of your shares to Julian, he reported during one visit. They were too grief-stricken to fight it. He's essentially running Pemberton Global now. Eloise's hands clenched into fists. What else? He's liquidated some of your personal assets. Not all of them, but enough to raise questions. I've been tracking the money. Some of it's going into legitimate investments. Some of it's disappearing to accounts I can't trace. He's hiding money, Eloise said. Looks that way. Preparing for something maybe. Or just being greedy. What about Tessa Vaughn? The lawyer consulted his notes. Still working her pharmaceutical job. Still living in the same apartment. No obvious connection to Julian publicly, but I've had an investigator following her. They meet regularly. Different hotels. Always careful. Always discreet. So he's still seeing her. More than that. I think they're planning something. The investigator overheard them talking about timing, about being patient, about waiting for the right moment. Gabriel leaned forward. Right moment for what? The lawyer shrugged. Don't know yet, but whatever it is, they're being careful about it. Keep watching them, Eloise said. Document everything. I want a complete record of everywhere they go, everyone they see, every dollar Julian spends. I'm on it. But Eloise, this is going to take time. We need to be patient. I have time, Eloise said, her hand on her growing belly. I have about 5 more months before this baby comes. That's 5 months to gather evidence, to get strong, to prepare, and then I come back from the dead and destroy him. At 5 months pregnant, Eloise had her first ultrasound. Gabriel drove her to a clinic 3 towns over where nobody would recognize her. The technician squirted cold gel on Eloise's belly and moved the wand around. "There," she said, pointing at the screen. "There's your baby." Eloise stared at the image, at the tiny person growing inside her. She could see arms and legs, a head, a heartbeat flickering steadily. "Do you want to know the sex?" Eloise looked at Gabriel. He nodded. "Yes," Eloise said. "It's a girl." "Congratulations." A girl, Ivy. The daughter who would never know her biological father tried to kill her before she was born. Gabriel squeezed Eloise's hand. "She's beautiful, just like her mom." The technician printed pictures, handed them over with a smile. Eloise stared at the ultrasound images all the way home. This tiny person who'd survived the impossible, who is growing strong despite everything. "I'm going to protect you," Eloise whispered to her belly. "I'm going to make sure you grow up in a world where he can't hurt us. I promise." At 6 months pregnant, everything changed. Eloise was scrolling through news sites on her laptop when she saw it, the headline that made her blood run cold. Tech CEO Julian Cross engaged a pharmaceutical executive, Tessa Vaughn. Her hands started shaking so badly she almost dropped the laptop. Gabriel was in the kitchen. He came running when he heard Eloise's sharp intake of breath. "What is it?" She turned the laptop so he could see. There was a photo. Julian and Tessa, smiling. She was wearing a ring that probably cost more than most people made in a year. The article was disgusting in its sentimentality. After the tragic loss of his first wife, billionaire CEO Julian Cross has found love again with longtime friend Tessa Vaughn. The couple announced their engagement yesterday at a private celebration. Cross, who has been open about his grief over losing wife Eloise Pemberton in a cliff accident 2 years ago, says Vaughn has been his rock through the darkest time of his life. "Elle would want me to be happy," Cross said in an exclusive interview. "Tessa has been there for me through everything. She's helped me heal. She's helped me move forward. I know Elle is looking down and smiling because I found someone who makes me want to live again." The wedding is set for June at the Pemberton estate. Eloise read the whole article, then read it again. Her vision was blurring with rage. "He's marrying her," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "He's marrying his accomplice, at my family's estate, using my money, pretending he loved me while planning his next wedding." Gabriel read over her shoulder. "When's the wedding?" "June 15th. 3 months from now." Eloise closed the laptop carefully, looked at Gabriel with eyes that burned. "I want to be there. At the wedding, I want to walk in there with Ivy in my arms. I want him to see exactly what he failed to kill. I want to watch his face when he realizes I survived, that I know what he did, that his perfect plan failed." "That's risky," Gabriel said carefully. "I know, but I need him to see me. I need him to understand that he lost, that I won." Gabriel studied her face. "You're serious about this?" "Completely serious. We have 3 months to gather final evidence, to get everything ready, to prepare. And then on June 15th, I'm going to crash my own murderer's wedding and destroy everything he built on my grave." "What about Ivy?" "She'll only be about 6 weeks old by then. Then she'll be there too. She deserves to be part of this. He tried to kill her before she was even born. She has a right to exist in the same room where he thought he'd gotten away with it." Gabriel sat down beside her. "This is dangerous. If anything goes wrong, if he tries something, that's why you'll be there. And security, and the FBI. I'm not going in unprepared. You've thought about this. For 2 years I've thought about nothing else. Every day I survive is another day of planning, another day of getting ready. I've been dead for 2 years. It's time to come back to life." Over the next 3 months, they planned everything. The lawyer hired a private investigator who was very good at finding information people wanted hidden. The investigator came back with gold. Flight records showing Tessa Vaughn on the same flight to Costa Azura as Julian and Eloise. Seat 12A, first class. 3 rows behind them. Hotel records showing Julian checked into room 431 at the Costa Marina Resort the day Eloise went into the ocean. Guest count, 2. Text messages recovered from Tessa's cloud storage. She'd been careless. Hadn't deleted everything. It's done. Room 431. Celebrating. We did it. She's really gone. Financial records showing Julian had researched Costa Azura extensively before the trip. Specifically, he'd looked up cliff deaths in the area, survivability rates, ocean currents, how long it took for bodies to be found. His search history from the week before their anniversary trip was damning. Costa Azura cliff deaths, survivable falls ocean, how to stage an accident, average time to find body in ocean Costa Azura. It was all there. Everything they needed to prove attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. This is enough, the lawyer said, spreading the evidence across Gabriel's dining table. This is more than enough. We can go to the FBI now. Get him arrested. No, Eloise said. Not yet. I want him to see me first. I want him to know what's coming before it hits. The lawyer looked uncertain. That gives him time to run. He won't run. His ego won't let him. He thinks he's untouchable. Let him think that until the moment I walk through those doors. At 7 months pregnant, Eloise went into nesting mode. Not for Ivy's nursery, though Gabriel had painted the spare room yellow and set up a crib. For the plan. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd walk in, what she'd wear. Every detail mattered. Gabriel contacted the FBI. Explained the situation carefully. An agent agreed to review the evidence. This is solid, the agent said after going through everything. We can get arrest warrants, but you understand this is highly irregular, walking into his wedding to reveal you're alive. I understand, Eloise said, but I need this. I need him to see my face. The agent looked at her for a long moment. Okay, we'll have agents stationed around the venue. When you give the signal, we move in. But if anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you abort and we handle it normally. Agreed. At 8 months pregnant, Eloise could barely move. Ivy was big and active and seemed determined to kick her way out early. Gabriel helped Eloise practice walking, sitting, standing. Everything hurt at this stage, but she pushed through it. I have to be able to do this, she said, struggling to her feet for the 10th time. I have to be strong enough. You are strong enough. You've always been strong enough. What if I go into labor at the wedding? Gabriel laughed despite himself. That would certainly make an impression. Eloise laughed too, then stopped abruptly. Oh no. What? I think my water just broke. Gabriel's eyes went wide. Now, you're only 37 weeks. Babies come when they're ready, apparently. He grabbed their hospital bag. They'd had it packed for weeks. Drove to the hospital 3 towns over where they'd been going for prenatal care. Eloise labored for 14 hours. Gabriel never left her side. You can do this, he said, holding her hand through contractions that seemed to split her in half. You're so strong. I'm right here. I can't. It's too much. I can't do this. You can. You survived a 200-foot fall. You survived your husband trying to murder you. You can definitely survive this. That's not helpful right now, Eloise gasped. Sorry. You're amazing and I love you and you're doing great. Better. At 3:42 in the morning, Ivy Catherine Moretti was born. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Dark hair. Her mother's eyes. The nurse placed her on Eloise's chest, and Eloise looked down at her daughter for the first time. All her fears about not being able to love this baby evaporated instantly. She looked at Ivy's tiny face and felt nothing but fierce, overwhelming, protective love. Hi, baby girl, Eloise whispered. Hi, Ivy. I'm your mama. I've been waiting to meet you. Ivy opened her eyes, looked directly at Eloise like she recognized her. Gabriel stood beside the bed with tears streaming down his face. She's perfect, he said. She looks just like you. Thank God, Eloise said. I was so afraid she'd look like him. But Ivy didn't look like Julian at all. She was all Eloise, strong and beautiful and completely her own person. Can I hold her? Gabriel asked. Eloise carefully transferred Ivy to Gabriel's arms. He held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Hi, Ivy, he said softly. I'm Gabriel. I'm not your biological father, but I love you like you're mine. I'm going to protect you and your mom for the rest of my life. That's a promise. Ivy wrapped her tiny hand around Gabriel's finger and held tight. She knows you, Eloise said. She knows you're safe. They spent 3 days in the hospital. Gabriel barely slept, just held Ivy and stared at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. On the 3rd day, the lawyer visited with final updates. "The wedding is in 6 weeks, he said. "Everything is set. The FBI is coordinated. All the evidence is compiled. Are you sure you want to do this?" Eloise looked at Ivy sleeping in her arms. "More sure than I've ever been about anything. He tried to kill us both. It's time he faced what he did. She's so small. Are you really going to bring her? She's part of this. She deserves to be there when justice happens. Besides, I want him to see her, to see exactly what he tried to destroy." Over the next 6 weeks, Eloise recovered from childbirth, lost most of the baby weight, got strong again, practiced walking in heels while carrying Ivy. Gabriel worried constantly. What if something goes wrong? What if he tries to hurt you again? What if Ivy gets scared with all the chaos? Then we adapt. But I'm not backing down now. Not after everything. 3 days before the wedding, they flew back to the States. Eloise wore a wig and sunglasses, traveled under the name Elena Russo on documents the lawyer had prepared. They stayed at a hotel under assumed names. Eloise called her parents from a burner phone. The conversation was short and devastating. "Mom." Silence. Then her mother's voice, cold and angry. "This isn't funny. Who is this?" "Mom, it's me. It's Eloise. I'm alive." Her mother screamed. Actually screamed. The phone clattered. Eloise heard her father in the background asking what was wrong. Then her father's voice on the line. "Who the hell is this?" "Dad, it's really me. Julian tried to kill me. He pushed me off that cliff in Costa Azura. But I survived. I've been hiding, gathering evidence, and I'm coming home. But you can't tell anyone. Not yet." Her father was breathing hard. "If this is some sick joke, it's not a joke. I'm alive. I have a daughter. Your granddaughter. Her name is Ivy, and she's 6 weeks old, and she's beautiful. I'll prove everything to you. But please, you have to trust me. Don't tell Julian. Don't tell anyone. Not until the wedding." "The wedding," her father repeated. "You know about the wedding. I know everything, and I'm going to stop it. But I need you to trust me." Her father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that broke Eloise's heart. "We thought we lost you. Your mother hasn't been the same, neither have I. If you're really alive, if this is really you, it's me, Daddy. I promise. And I'm coming home. I'm so sorry it took this long. I'm so sorry you've been in pain. But I needed time to get strong, to protect myself and Ivy, to make sure he couldn't hurt us again. Where are you?" "Close. I'll see you soon. I love you." She hung up before he could respond, sat on the hotel bed and cried. Gabriel sat beside her, pulled her close. "They're going to be so happy to see you. I put them through hell. They buried an empty casket. They mourned me for 2 years, because they thought you were dead, because Julian lied to them. None of this is your fault. I just want it to be over. I want him to pay. I want my life back. 2 more days. Then you get everything." The morning of June 15th arrived. Eloise woke up at dawn, couldn't sleep, too much nervous energy. She fed Ivy, changed her, dressed her in a tiny white dress that made her look like an angel. Then Eloise got ready herself. Simple white dress, nothing fancy, her dark hair down and natural, minimal makeup. She wanted to look like herself, not some polished version, just Eloise. Alive, strong, unbroken. Gabriel wore a dark suit, stood behind her while she looked at herself in the mirror. "You ready?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." That's courage, or insanity. Sometimes they're the same thing. They drove to the Pemberton estate, the place Eloise had grown up, the place that held so many memories, the place where Julian was about to marry his accomplice using her family's money and name. Cars lined the long driveway, hundreds of guests already inside. Media vans parked near the entrance. This was the wedding of the year, apparently. Everyone wanted to watch Julian Cross move on from tragedy and find love again. They had no idea what was about to happen. Gabriel parked away from the main entrance. They sat in the car for a moment. "Last chance to change your mind," Gabriel said. Eloise looked at Ivy sleeping in her car seat. then at Gabriel, then at the mansion where her husband was about to marry another woman. Let's go destroy him. They walked toward the building, Gabriel carrying Ivy, Eloise's heels clicking on pavement with each step. FBI agents were already in place, dressed as catering staff, security, guests, waiting for Eloise's signal. The lawyer met them at a side entrance. Everything's ready. The AV system is hacked. When you connect your phone, it'll display on every screen in the ballroom. The agents know the plan. Your parents know you're here. They're in the front row, trying not to break down. How do they look? Like they've seen a ghost, but they're holding it together. And Julian? Smug, confident, completely unaware that his life is about to implode. Eloise took a deep breath. Okay, let's do this. They could hear music starting inside. The processional. The wedding was beginning. Wait for my signal, Eloise said to the lawyer and the FBI agent standing nearby. I want to time this perfectly. They waited, listening to the muffled sounds of the ceremony starting. Guests sitting. Music playing. The officiant beginning. Then Eloise heard it. The words she'd been waiting for. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. She looked at Gabriel. He nodded, handed Ivy to her carefully. Eloise adjusted her daughter in her arms. Ivy was awake now, looking around with curious dark eyes. Ready to meet your father, baby girl? Don't worry. He's going to prison right after this. Gabriel opened the doors. The ballroom stretched before them. 500 guests in perfect rows. Tessa at the end of the aisle in her ridiculous expensive dress. Julian at the altar, looking every inch the successful CEO who'd overcome tragedy. And Eloise Pemberton, very much alive, standing in the doorway with her daughter in her arms. Someone gasped. Then someone else. Then the whole room seemed to inhale at once. Every head turned. The music stopped mid-note. Tessa's face went white. And Julian. Julian looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His mouth fell open. His eyes went wide. All the color drained from his face. Eloise smiled. The same serene smile she'd practiced in the mirror that morning. Then she started walking down the aisle. Hello, Julian, she said, her voice carrying perfectly in the silent ballroom. Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be. You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Some people will kill you for what you can give them. I just decided not to stay dead. Julian's legs buckled. He grabbed the altar to steady himself. No, he whispered. No. You're dead. You're dead. I watched you fall. Eloise kept walking. Each step deliberate. Each click of her heels echoing through the silent ballroom. You watched me fall, she agreed, her voice calm and clear. 200 feet off a cliff in Costa Azura. You stood at the top and made sure I went into the ocean. You waited 10 minutes to confirm I wasn't coming back up. Then you called for help and told everyone I slipped while taking a photo. Isn't that right? It was an accident, Julian said, his voice rising with panic. You fell. I tried to grab you, but I couldn't reach you in time. Liar. The word cut through the room like a blade. Eloise stopped 10 feet from the altar, shifted Ivy in her arms so everyone could see her clearly. This is Ivy, she said. Your daughter. The baby I was 6 weeks pregnant with when you pushed me off that cliff. I was going to tell you that day. Surprise you with the news. I thought you'd be happy. Instead, you tried to kill us both. Guests started murmuring. Tessa was shaking so hard, her bouquet was trembling. You're confused, Julian tried again. The fall. The head injury. You don't remember what really happened. I remember perfectly. You drove me to a cliff with no guardrails. You told me you needed me to die. You said it was nothing personal, that you just needed my money more than you needed me. Then you put your hands on my shoulders and you pushed. The room erupted. People shouting. Media cameras swinging around to capture everything. This was being broadcast live. Thousands of people watching. Eloise's parents pushed through the crowd. Her mother was sobbing. Her father's face was set in fury. But Eloise held up her hand. Not yet. She pulled out her phone. Tapped once. Every screen in the ballroom lit up. Flight records appeared. Highlighted rows showing Tessa Vaughn on the same flight to Costa Azura as Julian and Eloise cross. Seat 12A, first class, 3 rows behind them. Hotel records next. Julian Cross checked into room 431 at Costa Marina Resort the day his wife went into the ocean. Guest count, 2. Then text messages. Time-stamped. Dated. Impossible to deny. Julian to Tessa. It's done. Tessa to Julian. Room 431. Celebrating. Tessa to Julian. We did it. She's really gone. Julian to Tessa. Just have to wait the appropriate mourning period. Then we can go public. The ballroom was chaos now. Guests screaming. Media going absolutely wild. Security trying to restore order but failing completely. But Eloise wasn't finished. One more screen appeared. Julian's search history from the week before their anniversary trip. Costa Azura cliff deaths. Survivable, Falls Ocean. How to stage an accident. Average time to find body in ocean Costa Azura. He researched it, Eloise said, her voice somehow cutting through the noise. He planned every detail. He brought his mistress on our anniversary trip. He pushed his pregnant wife off a cliff. Then he celebrated with her while search and rescue teams looked for my body. Julian tried to run, actually tried to push through the crowd and escape. But FBI agents were already moving. They'd been positioned throughout the room, waiting for exactly this moment. Julian Cross, one agent said, grabbing Julian's arm and forcing it behind his back. You're under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree. No, Julian screamed, fighting against the handcuffs. She's lying. This is all lies. She's insane. The fall made her crazy. The agent pulled out a card and started reading. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Another agent approached Tessa. She'd collapsed onto the floor. Her $50,000 dress spread around her like a puddle of silk and broken dreams. Tessa Vaughn, you're under arrest as an accomplice to attempted murder. I didn't know, Tessa sobbed. I swear I didn't know. He told me it was an accident. He said she fell. Eloise walked over to where Tessa sat crumpled on the ground, crouched down carefully, mindful of Ivy in her arms. You knew, Eloise said quietly. The text messages prove you knew. You were on that flight. You stayed in that hotel room. You celebrated my death with champagne while my parents planned my funeral. You wanted my life so desperately you were willing to kill for it. I just wanted what you had, Tessa whispered. Well, congratulations. You're going to get it. For about 5 more minutes. Then you're going to spend the next 20 years in prison thinking about what you did. The agents hauled both of them up, started walking them toward the exits. Julian twisted in the agent's grip, looked back at Eloise with something that might have been regret, or might have been rage, or might have been both. I loved you, he shouted. I really did love you, El. Eloise stood up, adjusted Ivy on her hip, looked at the man she'd promised forever to with eyes that held nothing but cold clarity. No, you didn't. You loved my money. You loved my name. You loved what I could give you. But you never actually loved me. I know that now because I learned what real love looks like. She gestured to Gabriel standing near the doors. Quiet. Protective. Always there when she needed him. That's love. Someone who pulls you out of the ocean when you're dying. Someone who stays with you while you heal. Someone who asks for nothing in return except the privilege of being with you. You have no idea what that means. And you never will. The agents took Julian and Tessa away, led them out in handcuffs while 500 guests watched in stunned silence and cameras broadcast everything live to the world. The moment they were gone, Eloise's mother reached her, pulled her and Ivy into a hug so tight it almost hurt. My baby, she sobbed. My baby girl. We thought you were dead. We buried an empty casket. We mourned you every single day. I'm sorry, Eloise whispered, crying now too. I'm so sorry, Mama. I had to stay hidden. I had to protect myself and Ivy. I had to gather evidence so he couldn't get away with it. Her father wrapped his arms around all of them. His whole body was shaking. You're alive, he kept saying. You're really alive. My girl is alive. And you're a grandfather, Eloise said, pulling back enough to show him Ivy. This is Ivy Catherine, named after Grandma. She's 6 weeks old and she's perfect and she's so excited to meet you. Her father looked at Ivy with tears streaming down his face, reached out with one shaking finger and touched her tiny hand. Ivy immediately grabbed it and held tight. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks just like you. Thank God, Eloise said. I was terrified she'd look like him. The media was still there, cameras capturing every moment. Eloise knew this was all being broadcast, knew the world was watching. She turned to face the cameras directly. "My name is Eloise Pemberton," she said clearly. 2 years ago, my husband Julian Cross attempted to murder me by pushing me off a cliff while I was 6 weeks pregnant with our daughter. He wanted to inherit my stake in Pemberton Global Industries. He wanted my money. He wanted my life. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He thought I was dead. She paused. Let the words sink in. But a stranger pulled me from the ocean and saved my life. I spent 2 years healing, getting strong, raising my daughter, gathering evidence, and waiting for exactly the right moment to come back and destroy the man who tried to destroy me. She looked directly at the nearest camera. Julian Cross tried to kill me for my billions. Instead, he gave me something much more valuable. He taught me that I'm unbreakable, that I can survive anything, that some people will smile while they plan your murder, but other people will save your life and ask for nothing in return. She gestured to Gabriel again. This is Gabriel Moretti. He found me floating in the ocean, not breathing, and refused to give up. He lied to a hospital and said he was my husband so he could stay with me. He took care of me when I had nothing. He helped me raise Ivy. He protected us. He loved us. He's the reason I'm standing here today. Gabriel looked uncomfortable with the attention, but stepped forward when Eloise reached for his hand. Real love isn't about fairy tales and perfect proposals and expensive weddings, Eloise continued. It's about someone holding your hand through the worst moments of your life and never letting go. It's about actions, not words. It's about proving yourself every single day. Gabriel taught me that, and I will be forever grateful. She turned back to her parents. Can we go home now? I've been dead for 2 years. I'd like to start living again. Her mother laughed through tears. Yes, baby. Let's go home. They left the ballroom together. Eloise, Gabriel, Ivy, and her parents, walking past 500 shocked guests and dozens of cameras, walking out of the space where Julian had tried to build his new life on Eloise's grave, walking toward freedom. The trial started 3 months later. The prosecution had everything they needed. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Eloise testified first, calm and clear and absolutely devastating. She described the cliff, the push, the fall, waking up in the hospital, learning she'd survived what should have killed her, discovering that Julian had already moved on with her life. The defense attorney tried to suggest the fall had confused her, that she didn't remember correctly, that it could have been an accident. Then the prosecution presented the text messages, the hotel records, the flight manifests, the search history, everything that proved premeditation and conspiracy. Gabriel testified about finding her in the ocean, about the injuries that were consistent with being pushed, not falling accidentally, about the pregnancy that had somehow survived. Medical experts testified about the nature of her wounds, the trajectory of the fall, the impossibility of it being an accident given the evidence. Financial experts testified about Julian's access to Eloise's accounts, about money he'd moved and hidden, about the billions he stood to inherit if she died. The defense had nothing. They tried to create reasonable doubt, but the evidence was too strong, too complete, too damning. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. The courtroom was packed when they returned. Media filled every available seat. Eloise sat between Gabriel and her father, Ivy asleep in her arms. As the jury reached a verdict, the judge asked, "We have, Your Honor, on the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant Julian Cross?" The foreperson looked directly at Julian. "Guilty." Julian's face crumpled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but it was over. Everyone knew it was over. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find the defendant Tessa Vaughn? Guilty. Tessa was already sobbing, had been sobbing through most of the trial. It didn't help her. Nothing could help her. Sentencing came a week later. Julian Cross was sentenced to 25 years to life in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 25 years. Tessa Vaughn got 20 years to life. The judge looked at them both with barely concealed disgust. "You attempted to murder a pregnant woman for financial gain," the judge said. "You are the worst of humanity. You represent everything that is wrong with greed and selfishness and the belief that money matters more than human life. I hope you spend every day of your sentence reflecting on the life you tried to take and the daughter you tried to erase." I hope you never know a moment of peace." As they were led away, Julian looked at Eloise one last time. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice broken. "I'm so sorry, El." Eloise looked at him without emotion, without anger, without anything at all. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "Not for you, for me, because holding on to hate would only hurt me. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean what you did was okay. It just means I'm releasing the pain and moving forward without you." She turned to Gabriel, took his hand. "Let's go home." They walked out of that courtroom as a family. Eloise, Gabriel, Ivy, and her parents. Free. Finally, completely free. 1 year after the trial, Gabriel took Eloise back to Costa Azura. Not to the cliff. Never to the cliff. But to the beach where he'd found her floating in the ocean. Where their life together had begun in the worst possible way and transformed into something beautiful. They walked along the sand at sunset. Ivy was toddling now, running ahead and laughing, completely unaware of the significance of this place. "This is where I found you," Gabriel said, stopping near the water's edge. "Where our life together started." "Gabriel, you asked me to marry you once," he said. "A year ago, right after the trial. And I said I'd wait as long as you needed." He pulled out a small box, got down on one knee in the sand. "Eloise Pemberton, I have loved you from the moment I saw you fighting for your life in that water. You are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I've ever known. You've built an empire, raised an amazing daughter, and taught me what real courage looks like. Will you marry me?" The ring was a simple sapphire, her favorite stone, not because it was expensive, but because it reminded her of the ocean where Gabriel had saved her life. "Yes," Eloise said, crying and laughing at the same time. "God, yes." Ivy came running over. "Daddy!" Mommy crying. "Happy tears, sweetheart," Eloise said, scooping her up. "Daddy just asked me to marry him." "We getting married?" Ivy asked, her 2-year-old brain trying to process this. "We are," Gabriel confirmed, slipping the ring on Eloise's finger. "I be flower girl," Ivy announced. "You absolutely will be," Eloise agreed. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. At the Pemberton estate in the same ballroom where Julian had tried to marry Tessa. But this time, everything was different. This time the space was filled with love instead of lies. With people who genuinely cared instead of people performing care. With a future instead of a funeral. Eloise walked down the aisle in a simple dress with Ivy as her flower girl. The little girl took her job very seriously. Threw petals with intense concentration that made everyone smile. Gabriel cried when he saw Eloise, just like Julian had at their wedding. But these tears were real. These tears came from a man who knew exactly what he was getting and was grateful for every moment of it. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Eloise spoke first. "Gabriel, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You pulled me from the ocean when I was dying. You stayed with me when you had every reason to leave. You loved me when I thought I'd never love again. You gave Ivy a father when her biological father tried to kill her before she was born. You taught me what real partnership looks like, what real love looks like, what real strength looks like. I will love you fiercely for the rest of my life. I will show up for you the way you've shown up for me. I will be your partner in every sense of the word. This is my promise. This is my vow. This is my forever." Gabriel's turn. "Eloise, you crashed into my life. Literally, and woke me up. I was existing, not living, going through motions, surviving instead of thriving. You taught me that love doesn't die, it transforms, that broken things can be made whole, that family isn't just blood, it's choice. I choose you. Every day, every moment, in every way that matters, I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to stand beside you always, to be the partner you deserve. To be the father Ivy deserves, to build a life with you that honors everything we survived to get here. This is my promise. This is my vow. This is my forever." They kissed as husband and wife. The crowd cheered. Ivy clapped and shouted, "That's my mommy and daddy," and everyone laughed. It was perfect. Not in the manufactured, expensive way that Eloise's first wedding had been perfect, but in the real, messy, beautiful way that actual love is perfect. 2 years later, their son was born, Asher Gabriel Moretti. He had Gabriel's eyes and Eloise's determination, and Ivy was absolutely convinced he was her personal baby. That my brother, she'd tell anyone who'd listen. I helped take care of him. I very good big sister. She was the best big sister, gentle and protective and so proud. The Pemberton Moretti family settled into a rhythm. Eloise ran Pemberton Global with the vision she'd always had. Ethical business practices, sustainable growth, treating employees like people instead of resources. The company thrived under her leadership in ways it never had under Julian's greed. Gabriel opened his own architecture firm, designed sustainable homes for families who wanted to live gently on the earth. His work was beautiful and meaningful, and he loved every moment of it. They bought a house near the ocean, not as big as the Pemberton estate, but filled with warmth and laughter and the chaos of small children. Every Sunday they had dinner with Eloise's parents who'd become the grandparents they'd always wanted to be. Life was good, real, built on truth instead of lies. 5 years after the trial, a letter arrived from prison. From Julian. Eloise stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of her wanted to throw it away unread, but curiosity won. The letter was short. Eloise, I know I have no right to write to you, no right to ask for anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was greedy, selfish, evil. I've had 5 years to think about what I did, to understand the magnitude of my crimes. I see it now. What I lost, who you really were, what we could have had if I hadn't been blinded by money. I know you've moved on. I've seen the photos. You look happy. You have a beautiful family. You're doing incredible things with the company. Everything I should have supported instead of trying to steal. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I hope Ivy never knows what I tried to do. She deserves better than me. You both do. Take care of yourself, Elle. Be happy. That's all I can hope for now. Julian. Eloise read it twice. Then she walked to the fireplace and threw it in. Watched the paper curl and burn and disappear into ash. Gabriel walked in. Saw the burning letter. Him? Yeah. How do you feel? Nothing. I feel nothing. He's in prison. I'm here, living the life he tried to take. That's all that matters. Gabriel pulled her close. We won. We won, Eloise agreed. Outside, Ivy and Asher were playing in the yard. Their laughter drifted through open windows. The sound of a life built from ruins. The sound of happiness earned through survival. This was Eloise's life now. Not the one she'd planned with Julian. Not the fairy tale she'd imagined in college. Something better. Something real. Something earned through pain and resilience, and the kind of love that proved itself through action instead of words. Julian had tried to kill her. Instead, he'd set her free. He'd destroyed the naive woman who'd believed love should be simple. From those ashes, Eloise had become someone stronger, someone who knew the difference between performance and truth, someone who chose her own life instead of accepting what someone else tried to write for her. The greatest revenge wasn't making him suffer. It was building something so beautiful from the ashes that his attempt to destroy her became the catalyst for the life she was always meant to live. Eloise Pemberton had been pushed off a cliff and left to die. She'd survived. She'd healed. She'd fallen in love with the man who'd saved her without asking for anything in return. She'd built a family from wreckage. She'd reclaimed her empire. She'd walked into her attempted murderer's wedding carrying the daughter he'd tried to erase and watched his face as he realized he'd lost everything. That was real power. Not the billions she'd inherited, not the company she ran, but the strength to survive someone's worst intentions and transform them into her greatest triumph. Some people will try to kill you for what you can give them, but the right person will save your life and ask for nothing in return except the privilege of loving you. That difference makes all the difference. And as Eloise stood in her home filled with love and laughter and the sound of her children playing, she smiled with the same serene expression she'd worn walking into that wedding. Because she'd won, not by destroying Julian, but by refusing to let him destroy her. She'd survived. She'd thrived. She'd built something beautiful. And that was the best revenge of all. So if this story moved you, if it reminded you that you're stronger than whatever tried to break you, if it showed you that survival is possible even when everything seems impossible, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Mr. Hearthline Stories because we're building a community of people who believe in resilience and redemption and the power of refusing to stay broken. Comment below where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline. Let's build this family together. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to be reminded that they can survive anything. That they can come back from the dead, literally or figuratively, and build something beautiful from the ashes. Because that's what we do here at Mr. Hearthline Stories. We tell stories about real people facing impossible situations and finding the strength to survive. We celebrate resilience. We honor courage. We remind you that you're never as broken as you think you are. This was the story of Eloise Pemberton, a woman who was murdered for her billions and came back to life to destroy the man who tried to destroy her. A woman who learned that real love isn't about fairy tales. It's about someone pulling you from the ocean when you're drowning and staying with you while you learn to breathe again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing that survival is possible and that broken things can be made whole. Until the next story, remember this. You are stronger than you know. You can survive anything. And the worst thing that ever happened to you might just be the catalyst for the best thing that ever will. I'm Mr. Hearthline, and I'll see you in the next story.